Microsoft 365 Copilot is pitched as the AI tool designed for business, and this is often the framing you see in videos here. But if you're someone who's very happy using your ChatGPT, Gemini, or even personal Copilot account to get work done, or you're a small business owner or manager who's pleased with the AI results your team members are getting without you having to spend a dime on new licenses, you might not understand why this AI for business distinction is important and whether or not it matters. In this video, I'm going to break down this issue, introduce the topic of shadow AI and why it should be a concept we all understand, even if it's not something all of us need to worry about, and give you the information you need to protect your business or yourself individually as an AI user. My name is Nick DeCourcy. I'm a Microsoft 365 consultant who specialises in AI adoption for small and medium-sized businesses. I'm also a Microsoft MVP for Microsoft 365 Copilot. If you're interested in keeping up with AI advancements, make sure you get subscribed to the channel and drop this video a like so you get to see more from me in the future. And if you're interested in working with me, check out the links down in the video description to get in contact. So what is business AI? Microsoft 365 Copilot is one option, and the basic tier of this is included in all Microsoft 365 licenses. But OpenAI, Anthropic, and others all have specific SMB and enterprise-focused business tier license options that are positioned differently than the personal tier free or pro or plus options. The biggest difference in all cases is who owns the account and how it's provisioned and managed. A personal account is just that. You can sign up with any email address and add your own credit card details if you want to upgrade, and you as an individual are both the end user and the customer of the provider. You own the data in that account and you're responsible for it. If you leave your current job, you can take that account with you, including all your chat history and the associated data. A business account is owned and provisioned by your business. Someone responsible for IT signs up and then decides who gets access. They add a license associated with your user account, but they can turn that off and reassign it whenever they need to. If you leave the company, that account gets switched off and you lose access to everything inside it. Depending on which provider you go with and which tier of account you buy, there can be very little practical difference between the function of personal and business accounts. This isn't a distinction that necessarily drives a difference in experience for the end user, just a difference in who owns the account and the associated data it contains. The term shadow AI essentially describes a scenario where workers within a business utilize AI through using personal accounts. This could be something that happens in secret. It can happen in opposition to a centralized business rollout. For example, you give your users a Microsoft 365 Copilot license, but they still choose to use their personal Gemini account. Or it might be something that the business knows is happening, but it isn't recognized as a risk. In some cases, the business is even paying for the personal account subscription and not understanding that payment doesn't equal ownership. But the question is, why is all of this a risk? First, you end up with responsibility for activities you cannot see. Assuming workers in shadow AI scenarios are actually creating work outputs with those systems, you have no mechanism to control or audit that use, even though you, as the business owner or manager, are ultimately responsible for that work. What if the AI output is wrong and it ends up in a client project? How do you manage the accountability for that, as you have no visibility into that use? Second, you lose control of your data. In general, a business output needs a business input, and that input is going to include information that is known to an employee solely through their relationship with their employer. This might be a document, it might be an email, it might simply be proprietary knowledge. But there's an argument to say that if it's not something you'd say loudly in public, or it's a document that you could leave sitting on a coffee shop table, it shouldn't be housed in a personal AI service. This data issue, though, has two faces. The first is the one we think about the most. Model training. Most personal AI services, including Microsoft's Consumer Copilot, by default allow data transacted with the service to be used for future training or other product improvements. By comparison, Microsoft 365 Copilot and in general other business tier products too absolutely do not do this. But what's the actual risk here? It's unlikely Microsoft is that interested in the proprietary recipe you use at your donut shop, no matter how important it is to you. But if that content makes its way into a model's training, and in the future someone asks for a donut recipe, it's possible that it's your secret knowledge that comes out. The second face of this issue is, in my opinion, the more important one to understand. In general, within the scope of a single account, the information a user has shared continues to be accessible to them. They can look back through their chats and see the content they uploaded. But increasingly, these past chats are also used to form the AI service's memory of you so that it can provide more relevant results. This is a problem from two angles. First, you probably just don't want an employee having their own personal copy of your data. It may not be compliant with your customer agreements or local regulations for this to be the case, and it becomes a mess when one day they do leave your employment. But more importantly, that memory influences their AI going forward. If they can leave and go to a competitor, they can immediately be using an AI that has been given context that allows it to respond in alignment with how you do business. Depending on your environment, the guardrails around your data might be higher or lower barriers. The big selling point of Microsoft 365 Copilot is that it inherently works with the Microsoft ecosystem data governance you might have already set up. Think permissions, sensitivity labeling, and data loss prevention, for example. However, business tier services from other providers are also largely designed to give you more granular control over what data the AI system can connect to and how it's used within that tool. However, the foundational reality is that if you give your users the ability to see information you want to protect on screen, then they can shortcut all of this protection and use their own AI. Technology guardrails without training and policies are in effect just an added layer of friction. Not useless, but certainly not bulletproof either. The goal for any business concerned about these issues must be to embed a controlled AI service that serves the needs of employees as well as their own personal tools do. But should you really be concerned about these issues? It may be a somewhat controversial opinion, but I do think there's a good argument to say that some organisations shouldn't actually be worried about all this at all. But keep watching for another question every business is going to need an answer to. A business-first AI product starts to solve this risk for many organisations, but there are a large number for whom this isn't really a risk in the first place. For example, you run a restaurant and your chef wants to run her menu through ChatGPT to give it a bit more flair, or a sales associate using Gemini to generate images for a merchandise display. There is no data risk here, so there's no chance of harm. And there are many smaller businesses where for many processes this will be the case. Different types of businesses and different jobs have different risk profiles when it comes to these sorts of data and ownership's issues related to AI. And frankly, the upside from investment in these tools isn't equally distributed for all businesses either. The thing you must acknowledge though is your risk profile isn't contingent on whether you've chosen to adopt AI. Microsoft research shows that 80% of AI users in SMBs are bringing their own. So if your data or processes would be at risk because of this, it's a problem you should seek to solve. However, we probably shouldn't blow this problem out of proportion either. I think many IT pros lump this shadow AI risk in with other aspects of shadow IT. The situation where an employee or department might go off and buy their own unsanctioned app because they aren't getting what they need to do their job. Many of us are familiar with those companies that rely on some monolithic 1990s CRM system, but the employees are actually doing their job in 3 different instances of HubSpot bought on corporate credit cards by team leaders. In most cases, I think I would far rather someone be using their own ChatGPT account than setting up their own CRM. So if your business is one of those that's afflicted by shadow IT, your shadow AI problem might not be at the top of the list of things you need to solve. Successful Copilot adoption requires a lot more than just buying licenses. And if shadow AI is a concern, real adoption is what solves it, not just a new product that no one uses. This is exactly how I help businesses, with training and adoption support that takes your new users on the journey to be empower users. For information on these services and public courses, see the links in the video description. And from the employee's angle, there are important, though different, considerations too. Most employers have confidentiality or non-disclosure arrangements in place that probably make using your own AI tool a potential disciplinary violation. But beyond this, most of us are just trying to do a good job, not do something wrong. But even if you are careful and get good outputs that don't put your employer at risk, risk does exist for you. If a client were to contest how their work was done, or local authorities were to get a complaint of AI processing without consent, would your private account and non-business data be at risk of disclosure? This issue cuts both ways, where commingling your private information with your work is as risky for you as the commingling of information is for the business you work for. However, while these issues of technology and data ownership are important, I do think there's another aspect to this conversation that largely flies under the radar and deserves a lot more attention. A chat an employee has with Copilot, where they lay out their internal thought process around a task in detail in order for the AI to take it on, is substantively different than an email to a colleague, and often contains much more detail than even a process instructional document or an SOP. It has always been the case that while businesses own the inputs and outputs of knowledge work and establish the procedures and guardrails processes happen within, the actual mental effort of doing the work has been owned by the employee. Any worker could apply to a different job tomorrow and legitimately take with them the knowledge about how to do what they do. They just had to leave behind what they had done and what they had used to do it. AI is upending that. The ways and means of knowledge work are being pushed into company-owned systems, while many of those companies, either implicitly or explicitly, are seeing AI as a means to drive more value from less human labour in the future. This is a transition we are not talking through enough. While we all worry about the ownership of data, we are ignoring the ownership of thought. I doubt that many employees who are creating thorns in the side of IT leaders with shadow AI are doing so because they have thought about who should own their thinking and decided a personal ChatGPT account is the best place to keep it. It has much more to do with friction from internal systems and a perception of one AI tool being better than another. However, as the drumbeat of workplace change because of AI adoption becomes louder, it seems unlikely that these types of issues that bring questions about AI technology right into the normal domain of HR leadership stay unasked in many businesses. From a technology perspective, the answer to questions about personal versus business AI is normally an easy one. But from a human perspective, the questions are only just starting to arrive and are likely going to be much harder to answer. If the true promise of AI is to redefine what work looks like for the benefit of everyone in society, then these are the hard problems we must grapple with. Where do you stand on these issues? And is this a broader conversation that's going on in your company? Share with others down in the comments. Thanks for watching through to the end. I hope this was useful to you. Until the next video, bye bye.